after studying this module, you will be able to learn about your basic human rights, understand the meaning of charter and how can the agencies use it, know the challenging discriminatory practices, discuss hand-in-hand basics of creating a human rights-based approach to our clients' needs. What are human rights? Human rights are rights inherent to all human beings by virtue of being human, whatever our nationality, place of residence, sex, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, language, or any other status. We are all equally entitled to our human rights without any discrimination. These rights are all interrelated, interdependent, and indivisible. They are more than values and behaviors which belong to everyone and can't be taken away. They are about the relationship between the state and the individuals. Provide a floor, not a ceiling, of basic standards below which the state must not fall and which it must protect or fulfill. Universal human rights are often expressed and guaranteed by law in the forms of treaties, customary international law, general principles, and other sources of international law. International human rights law lays down obligations of governments to act in certain ways or to refrain from certain acts in order to promote and protect human rights and fundamental freedoms of individuals or groups. Definitions in the Charter of 1948. Human rights protected by the Charter. Human rights mentioned in the Charter are as follows. Article 1. Free and equal in dignity and right. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and concise and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. Article 2. Prohibition of discrimination. Everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration, without distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. Furthermore, no distinction shall be made on the basis of the political, jurisdictional, or international status of the country or territory to which a person belongs, whether it is independent, trust, non-self-governing, or under any other limitation of sovereignty. Article 3. Right to life, liberty and security. Everyone has the right to life, liberty and security of person. Article 4. Prohibition of slavery. No one shall be held in slavery or servitude. Slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all their forms. Article 5. Prohibition of torture. No one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman or degraded treatment or punishment. According to the UN Convention on Torture and Other Inhuman Criminal Degrading Treatment, 1984, torture means any act by which severe pain or suffering, whether physical or mental, is intentionally inflicted on a person for such purposes as obtaining from him or a third person information or a confession, punishing him for an act he or a third person has committed or is suspected of having committed, or intimidating or coercing him or a third person, or for any reason based on discrimination of any kind, when such pain or suffering is inflicted by or at the instigation of or with the consent of acquiescence of a public official or other person acting in an official capacity. It does not include pain or suffering arising only from inherent in or incidental to lawful sanctions. Article 6. Right to recognition as person before the law. Everyone has the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law. Article 7. Equality before the law. All are equal before the law and are entitled without any discrimination to equal protection of the law. All are entitled to equal promotion against any discrimination in violation of this declaration and against any incitement to such discrimination. Article 8. Right to an effective remedy. Everyone has the right to an effective remedy by the competent national tribunals for acts violating the fundamental rights guaranteed to him by the Constitution or law. Article 9. Prohibition of arbitrary arrest. No one shall be subjected to arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile. Article 10. Right to a fair trial. Everyone is entitled in full equality to a fair and public hearing by an independent and impartial tribunal in the determination of his rights and obligations and of any criminal charge against him. Article 11. Presumption of innocence and no retroactive application of penal laws. First, everyone charged with a penal offence has the right to be presumed innocent until proved guilty according to law in a public trial at which he has all the guarantees necessary for his defence. Second, no one shall be held guilty of any penal offence because of any act or omission of any act which did not constitute a penal offence under national or international law at the time when it was committed. No heavy penalty is to be imposed than the one that was applicable at the time the penal offence was committed. Next is Article 12, Right to privacy. No one shall be subjected to arbitrary interference with his privacy, family, home or correspondence, or to attacks upon his honor and reputation. Everyone has the right to the protection of the law against such interference or attacks. Article 13. Freedom of movement, exit and re-entry. First is, everyone has the right to freedom of movement and residence with the borders of each state. Everyone has the right to leave any country including his own and to return to his own country. The above mentioned rights shall not be subject to any restrictions except those which are provided by laws which are necessary to protect national security, public order, public health or morals or the rights and freedoms of others and are consistent with the other rights recognized. Fourth, no one shall be arbitrarily deprived of the right to enter his own country. Article 14. Right to asylum. First, everyone has the right to seek and to enjoy in other countries asylum from persecution. Second, the right may not be invoked in the case of prosecutions genuinely arising from the non-political crimes or from acts contrary to the purposes and principles of the United Nations. Article 15. Right to nationality. First, everyone has the right to a nationality. Second, no one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his nationality nor denied the right to change his nationality. Article 16. Right to marry and family life. Men and women of full age without any limitation due to race, nationality or religion have the right to marry and to found out a family. They are entitled to equal right as to marriage, during marriage and at its dissolution. Second, marriage shall be entered into only with the free and full consent of the intending spouses. The family is the natural and fundamental group unit of society and is entitled to protection by society and the state. Article 17, right to property. Everyone has the right to own property alone as well as in association with others. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his property. Article 18, freedom of thought, conscience and religion. Everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience and religion. This right includes freedom to change his religion or belief and freedom, either alone or in community with others, and in public or private to manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship and observance. Article 19, freedom of opinion and expression. Everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. Article 20, freedom of assembly and association. Everyone has the right to freedom of peaceful assembly and association. No one may be compelled to belong to an association. Article 21, participation in government. Everyone has the right to take part in the government of his country directly or through freely chosen representatives. Everyone has the right of equal access to public service in his country. Article 22, economic, social and cultural rights. Everyone as a member of society has the right to social security and is entitled to realization through national effort and international cooperation and in accordance with the organization and resources of each state of the economic, social and cultural rights, indispensable for his dignity and the freedom of his personality. Article 23, right to work. Everyone has the right to work, to free choice of employment, to just and favorable conditions of work and to protection against unemployment. Everyone without any discrimination has the right to equal pay for equal work. Everyone who works has the right to just and favorable remuneration, ensuring for himself and his family an existence worth of human dignity and supplemented if necessary by other means of social protection. Everyone has the right to form and to join trade unions for the protection of his interests. Article 24, right to rest and leisure. Everyone has the right to rest and leisure, including reasonable limitation of working hours and periodic holidays with pay. Article 25, right to an adequate standard of living and health. Everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of himself and of his family, including food, clothing, housing and medical care and necessary social services, and the right to security in the event of unemployment, sickness, disability, widowhood, old age or other lack of livelihood in circumstances beyond his control. Motherhood and childhood are entitled to special care and assistance. All children, whether born in or out of wedlock, shall enjoy the same social protection. Article 26, right to education. Everyone has the right to education. Education shall be free at least in the elementary and fundamental stages. Elementary education shall be compulsory. Technical and professional education shall be made generally available, and higher education shall be equally accessible to all on the basis of merit. Education shall be directed to the full development of the human personality and to the strengthening of respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms. It shall promote understanding, tolerance and friendship among all nations, racial or religious groups, and shall further the activities of the United Nations for the maintenance of peace. Parents have a prior right to choose the kind of education that shall be given to their children. Article 27. Right to culture. Everyone has the right freely to participate in the cultural life of the community, to enjoy the arts and to share in scientific advancement and its benefits. Everyone has the right to the protection of the moral and material interest resulting from any scientific, literary or artistic product of which he is the author. Article 28. Social and international order. Everyone is entitled to a social and international order in which the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration can be fully realized. Article 29 tells about the duties and limitations. Everyone has duties to the community in which alone the free and full development of his personality is possible. In the exercise of his rights and freedoms, everyone shall be subject only to such limitations as are determined by law solely for the purpose of securing due recognition and respect for the rights and freedoms of others and of meeting the just requirements of morality, public order and general welfare in a democratic society. These rights and freedoms may in no case be exercised contrary to the purposes and principles of the United Nations. Article 30 talks about no abuse of rights. Nothing in this declaration may be interpreted as implying for any state, group or person any right to engage in any activity or to perform any kind of act aimed at the destruction of any of the rights and freedoms set forth therein. How the Charter works. Statements of compatibility must be made in Parliament when laws are introduced. Parliament may override application of human rights in exceptional circumstances. Existing laws must be interpreted to be compatible with the Charter wherever possible. All public authorities must act compatibly with the Charter. Supreme Court can declare statutes incompatible, direct legislature to amend them. Parliament remains supreme in determining whether to pass or retain legislation incompatible with the principles of Universal Declaration of Human Rights Act of 1948. Overall, the Charter protects individuals who are natural persons, not corporations. Duties on three branches of government: Parliament, compatibility statements. Courts interpret all acts compatibility if possible. Executive obligation to act compatibly, breach may be relied on in some legal proceedings. In addition to FOI, privacy, administrative law, whistleblowers, protection, ombudsman, anti-discrimination laws, etc. and the rules of natural justice are included in the Charter. Further, a human right can be limited. Such reasonable limits can be demonstratively justified in a free and democratic society based upon human dignity, equality and freedom, and taking into account all relevant factors: the nature of the right, the importance of the purpose of the limitation, the nature and extent of the limitation, the relationship between the limitation and its purpose, any less restrictive means reasonably available to achieve the purpose and that the limitation seeks. How NGOs can use these? Charter. Demanding protection of human dignity, challenging discrimination, promoting participation and human resource sensitive decision making, challenging brutality, taking positive steps to protect human rights, using human rights principles where resources are an issue, using human rights to challenge blanket policies, protecting human rights in contracted out services. Dignity. Rights are mainly based on human dignity. Illustration: when the staff refused to clean the room of a man detained in a maximum security psychiatric center in seclusion, where he repeatedly soiled himself or move himself, saying he would just do it again. The advocate challenged the treatment of the man on the basis of inhuman and degrading treatment and his right to privacy successfully. Challenging discrimination. A psychiatric hospital had a practice of sanctioning asylum seekers who didn't speak English without an interpreter. An NGO successfully challenged this practice on human rights grounds. It was a breach of their right not to be discriminated against on the basis of language and their right to liberty. Promoting participation and challenging brutality. Promoting participation. A disability support team had a policy of providing support to users who wanted to participate in social activities but refused to provide a worker for a gay man who wanted to go to a gay pub. Heterosexual users regularly went to clubs and pubs of their choice. The man's advocate challenged this on the basis of the man's right to respect for his privacy and not to be discriminated against on the basis of sexuality. Challenging brutality. A mentally ill young man placed in residential care for treatment was found bruised by his parents, who raised the issue with the managers and felt their concerns were dismissed and their visiting rights were then removed. The parents challenged this on the basis of their son's right not to be treated in an inhumane and degrading way and respect for family life. Positive steps to protect human rights. A social worker used human rights language to get accommodation for a woman and children fleeing from a violent partner. She argued the housing authority had a positive duty to protect them from inhumane and degrading treatment and to protection of their lives. Another social worker managed to invoke a local authority's positive obligation to protect a man suffering from panic disorder to get them to issue him with a bus pass because he could not use public transport effectively. That is, had to get off the bus every few minutes to calm down. Using human rights to get resources. An advocate successfully argued that an aged woman with mental illness and disturbed behavior while in hospital for treatment should not be moved from the hospital and put into residential care against her wishes on cost grounds because she had the human right to privacy and choice, and so resources were found to support her care at home where she wanted to live. A disabled woman's payments were reduced to the point where she could no longer afford a personal assistant to help her with toileting, leading to aggravation of her serious kidney condition. Challenging blanket policies. The Education Authority policy provided school transport for children with special needs who lived more than 3 miles from school and refused to provide it to a child living 2.8 miles away, unable to travel independently. This was successfully challenged on the basis of its being a disproportionate interference with the child's right to private life. So what should you do? First, adopt a human rights-based approach to services. If you are contracted, funded to provide a government service, you may be a public authority yourself for those functions and need to comply with the Charter. Every employee in your service needs to understand Charter rights and how they work. Breaches of Charter considerations may mean public decisions or actions can be challenged as unlawfully made and at the very least should be remade. Can't sue over breach of a Charter right but can lobby, argue and utilize existing laws. Example, Ombudsman, Internal Review Process, VCAT, Anti-Discrimination Laws. VEOHRC can intervene in legal action review by invitation, a public authority, and must report on the first 4 years of the Charter's effectiveness. A human rights-based approach to our work. Claim human rights as a tool for social change and in our own work. Use human rights arguments while having a central voice in policy debates. Use human rights-based approach in our own work and partnerships. prioritize human rights in our work, raising awareness and capacity. How can issues we work on relate to human rights issues? Identifying human rights principles we already work to. Work in dialogue and partnerships to raise awareness and use of human rights tools to influence and challenge discriminatory assumptions about our clients. Third, use a checklist for action. Does this situation raise human rights issues? What specific human rights are affected? Who owns those rights? Who or what is responsible for respecting and considering those rights? Has the responsible decision maker considered those rights having regard to due process? If the human rights has been limited by the decision maker, is the limitation right? Resonate. Demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society based upon human dignity, equality, and freedom. Did it take into account all relevant factors? The nature of the right, the importance of the purpose of the limitation, the nature and extent of the limitation, the relationship between the limitation and its purpose, any less restrictive means reasonably available to achieve the purpose that the limitation seeks. Fourth is use charter opportunities. Set the agenda. Don't accept decision makers' preferences, example about allocation of resources. Integrate equal opportunity laws and human rights agenda to impact the largely untouched rights of drug and alcohol affected human beings and their families. Build partnerships and capacities of those working to tackle social exclusion and inequality to use HRBAs in their work. So what we have learned so far? We have learned what are human rights, why are they essential, what to do if someone breaks or violates these rights of ours. This module helps us to deal with these kind of situations. Also, you were able to understand about the different fundamental rights laid down in the Charter.